Hello everyone, this is the Chubby Funster. Today I'm going to be applying the principles of Dungeon Design 101 to the Lost Mines of Phandelver, the introductory adventure for 5th edition D&D. This is going to be a multi-part series. This first video is going to focus on overall structure of the module and the first interaction at the Cragmaw hideout. My friend Joe the lawyer recently told me that he thinks this is the best intro D&D module ever made, and I took that personally. You see, I participated in the 5e playtesting phase, and it was difficult to enjoy. After a few packets, my group asked me to write back to Wizards of the Coast and tell them to stop sending anything. They just didn't want to play anymore. I know there's a lot of people out there who like 5th edition D&D. I am not one of them. But my criticisms of this module have nothing to do with any of that. The design principles that I advocate for apply outside of the framework of any particular edition of D&D. They even apply outside of D&D. So let's get into it. The module starts on the Tribor Trail, with the party serving as escorts on a wagon headed to Phandalin. They get ambushed by goblins and can follow a trail back to more goblins at the Cragmaw hideout for their first dungeon experience. Now, do you see how I explained all that in just 2 sentences? After a page and a half summary of rules, which is fine, I'm not complaining about that, Wizards of the Coast felt that the first thing they should provide the GM with is this deep background of the region. And that's followed by a module overview that is also way too long. And then there's a discussion of an adventure hook, which they describe as optional, but which they just wove through the entire module overview. And then they back that up with more blathering exposition about the Forgotten Realms, all of which you don't need. But if you look closely, you can still see my little X underneath all that crap. You see, the goal of this module should be to get people to play D&D as soon as possible, as easily as possible. You want them to find this cave, you want them to go inside and begin exploring. That's what D&D is. That is what you want. And for any other module, feel free to get about as complex as you want. Talk about the big bad guy, and he has all these plans, and there's this guy who knows this other guy, and they're part of a faction, or all that shit. That's okay. The GM can spend all the time they want going through your huge ass module. But this is an introductory module. The introductory module. You're fighting goblins and later bandits and basic undead. You're not just trying to get the players into the action quickly. You're trying to teach the GM how to be a GM. So bombarding them with mountains of crap that they have to read is just bad design. You don't teach someone to grill a hamburger by starting into a discussion of charcoal versus gas or the history of cooking over a fire or grill philosophy classes. You put a patty on the grill and you tell them how to go from there. Now, if you felt it was essential to present a module overview, they should have done that based on a series of escalating simple goals. First, the party discovers there's an enemy, and they have to rise to the occasion by pursuing that enemy. Then they go to Phandalin, and they realize it's not safe, and they have to step in and secure it so it can be their base of operations in this whole thing. And then with Phandalin secure, they can now project their power outward and explore the region to investigate the nature of all of these threats. And at some point, they have to go to Cragmaw Castle and learn the location of the enemy mastermind, and only then can they assault Wave Echo Cave and eliminate this entire problem. That brings a resolution to the arc of events and completes the whole thing. And at each stage, the GM needs to know exactly what to do and how to phrase it to push the PCs forward. Pursue those goblins, secure a Phandalin, get out there and explore for more leads, locate the source of the attacks, and finally eliminate the threat. But this is Dungeons and Dragons, not world map exploration and dragons. I think that the goal of an introductory Dungeons and Dragons module should be to get the players into a dungeon as soon as possible. Now, this module tries to do that with an ambush on the road. And we know they can write succinctly because they do a decent job of it in the opening paragraph where this is being explained to the GM. But then they absolutely pack the box text that you're supposed to read to the players with tons of things that they're going to have to remember. I think it is useful to determine the minimum amount of information you need to make something happen. The players need to know that they're escorting a wagon for 10 gold each. The wagon is currently on the Tribor Trail. It's going to Phandalin. That's more information than you get in this wagon, if you think about it. All the other information can be delivered once you get going. When a reference to Gundren Rockseeker comes up in play, you say, hey, you recognize that guy? That's the guy who hired you to escort the wagon. The other NPCs can tell you about Gundren was excited about something and had some big plan in the works with his brothers. You don't need to give that to the players beforehand. And anyone who's a friend of Gundren can tell you when they meet you that they're a friend of Gundren, such as Sildar Hallwinter. Gosh, what a horrible name that guy has. And you don't even need to tell the PCs where to drop off the goods in Phandalin. When they get there, you can just say, oh, you were told to take this stuff to Barthen's Provisions. And this is not just a frivolous discussion or Greg's personal opinion. The players and the GM only have a certain amount of bandwidth to process and remember what's going on in the game at any given moment in time. And if you max out that bandwidth on information that isn't relevant at the moment, they will zone out and forget it. They might even say, this game is too complicated, I don't know what's going on, and they quit. The amount of information you're delivering should be as limited and relevant as possible, laser focused. Wizards went beyond just GM exposition. They wanted you to ask the players to add their own backstory, further delaying the transition into action, and they even felt like it was necessary to make it clear that if no one is holding the reins, the oxen won't pull the wagon. Well, let me tell you something, folks. You can't fix stupid. Stupid is forever. So, anyway, you're supposed to tell the players that they see two dead horses in the road up ahead, killed by arrows. And when they investigate this, they get attacked by four goblins. And when only one of them is left, he is supposed to run away down the goblin trail. But this creates four potential issues, which they anticipated. The PCs could lose this fight, and the text tells them to just let the PCs get looted and have them go to Phandalin and restock, then come back here and start all over again. Start out the game with zero consequences. Great. The PCs could also capture one of the goblins, which would then give them access to a lot of information and let them bypass a bunch of the challenges. Alternatively, the PCs might succeed so well that no goblin escapes. They might not even realize there is a goblin trail. And finally, they might never pursue the fleeing goblin anyway and just keep going to Phandalin. But these are problems wizards created for themselves. We can imagine an alternative setup that makes almost all of this stuff go away. They're still on the road, they still see two dead horses from a distance, and there are still four goblins. But they are dragging the horses off the road. There's a lot of footprints. There's drag marks. It looks like there's been a fight. And when they see the PCs, they run away down the goblin trail. Now, under these circumstances, the PCs can't be defeated because the goblins don't want to fight, they just run away. And the PCs can't even capture a goblin because it runs away before they even have a chance to stop their wagon. And the players will definitely know that something shady went down and the goblins are running down some kind of a trail. And if the players just ignore this whole thing and head to Phandalin anyway, They can be told that Gundren is missing and they won't get paid unless they go find him, and they'll have a clue about this location and they can just come right back here and start. And this would be the call to adventure from the hero's journey. We want them to be heroes, right? And if you think I'm being harsh and I'm just a pain in the ass, making the adjustments I've described in this video so far would remove roughly 2 entire 8.5 by 11 pages that the GM has to read before they can play this module. I'm not saying this to be a pedantic troll. Do you want to explore a damn dungeon? Or what? Let's get to it, instead of wasting our time with all this unnecessary crap. You don't need to know about the Lord's Alliance to run down this trail after these fucking goblins. So let's say we finally get here. What kind of dungeon are we looking at? This is the fourth type of dungeon that I talked about in Dungeon Design 101, the open design. And as I pointed out in that video, you can have problems with these designs because thinking creatures, like goblins, can react to the danger that comes up to them for them as a unit. So let's look at what happens when you do that. Now, except for the starting location and Area 4, which is just a connecting passage, every part of this dungeon is defended by a dangerous thing. There are only 2 interesting things in this dungeon: the pools of floodwater that the goblins have prepared, and the captive that they have, Sildar Hallwinter. Gosh, I hate saying that name. The rest of the dungeon is just cave, rock, and basic supplies. And there's only really one valuable thing here, and it's not even that great. All the coin in this dungeon put together won't even buy you a set of chainmail. Escorting Sildar and the stolen goods back to Phandalin will only net you 100 gold. And the 2 potions of healing in this 8th room, you can just recover HP that you've lost. So it's not even a really cool treasure. And in addition to this combat-heavy design, the physical design of the dungeon is arranged so that the players will almost always be on the defensive when they should be the surprise attackers that the goblins weren't prepared for. The map uses a 5-foot scale, and that means a 5e torch, 20-foot bright light, 20-foot dim light, can easily be seen from adjacent rooms. The goblins at location 2 are sentries, behind what is described as an impenetrable thicket, giving them 3/4 cover. The text says that the PCs can make stealth checks to sneak up on these goblins, but they can't even see the goblins through the thicket, so they would just be guessing or assuming that there were goblins over there. Goblins are supposed to be lazy and inattentive, but they will automatically notice the PCs if they cross the stream to enter the dungeon. And the goblin in location 5 is just sitting in the dark, looking at the cave mouth, waiting for intruders. If he detects any light source, which he can easily see from that distance, then he can just sneak over to room 7 and have the goblins there break open a dam and release a flood down this path, dealing 1d6 damage to anyone that fails their saves and throwing them out of the dungeon. Although it technically doesn't say this in the text, releasing a massive flood of water down this passage should put the entire goblin force on alert. Who would not be able to hear that? And as intelligent creatures, they should all move into ambush positions at 3, 4, 5, and any PCs that come back in are going to get slaughtered. Realistically, the PCs would be doomed to either retreat or die if this flood gets triggered. Now, there are 3 wolves in room 3, but they're chained up. They bark a lot anyway, so it's not going to alert any goblins if they start barking when you come by. But if you go too far into the room, you get attacked. And if you mess with the wolves, there's a chance they're going to break free of their restraints. The wolves can be calmed down with an animal handling check with a lower DC if meat is used. I think all of these are decent setups with opportunities for players to do a variety of different things. And there's also a passage up to room 8, but it's steep. There's a risk of falling, and it also leads right into the boss fight. but it would bypass the flooding effect. Unfortunately, there's no way for the PCs to even know about the flooding effect at this point, but I do think that this passageway is a good addition to the map design. Location 4 is also a steep, tricky passage, but if anyone weighing more than 100 pounds climbs up here, and what would that be? A naked halfling, maybe? The ledge collapses and deals 2d6 to everyone caught in the path of the rubble. Yeah, that's not going to frustrate players. And room 6 is another collision of poor outcomes. There are 5 goblins and a disgruntled lieutenant here. You're assumed to immediately fight them. If the PCs are winning that fight, the lieutenant threatens to kill the hostage, and he demands that they kill his boss in order to break the stalemate. Even if they end up doing that, it says he demands extra payment in coin. Now remember, there's barely any damn coin in this dungeon, so if they parlay with this guy, they're going to end up walking out of here with essentially no treasure, nothing to show for it. And if they don't parlay, they're going to have to waste their healing resources preventing this hostage from bleeding out, or he's just going to be dead. So, to give you a sense of the stakes involved in this room, the lieutenant is sitting on 3 gold teeth worth 1 gold piece each and 15 silver pieces. He is broke AF. And this hostage knows way too much, and now we are thrown into more massive plot exposition. You could reduce this whole thing to just 3 simple sentences. I was traveling to Phandalin with my friend Gundren. I wanted to check on an old friend, and he was meeting up with his brothers. The goblins found a treasure map in Gundren's things and decided to take him to their king. See? Done. Everything else could be done in Phandalin. You don't need to do all this crap. Now, room 7 is interesting. I like the idea of a prepared flood. That's cool. But the flood can only be used on the PCs. The map is designed in such a way that the players cannot really trick the goblins into being in the path of the water. Imagine if they could take out 4 or 5 goblins with this thing if they're clever enough. I feel like this was just a missed opportunity. And room 8 is another instance of potential with poor execution. The leader of this band is a bugbear named Clarg. He has a pet wolf, and the text says he will retreat if his wolf is killed. Does that mean he loves the wolf or not? I don't know. But if you killed my dog, I might fight to the death to take your ass out. Anyway, let's step back and look at the overall design again. You can tell a lot about design intent based on what the designer anticipates in the text. And in the Cragmaw hideout, they anticipate screwing over the players quite a bit. The sentry goblins will spot you if you cross the stream. The wolves will break free of their chains if you mess with them. The slope will collapse and injure you if you try to climb it. The goblins will trigger a flood as soon as they spot you, and the lieutenant will kill a hostage unless you complete a demanding task for him and then ask for more money on top of that. And finally, the leader will escape down a slope if things don't go his way. But what don't they anticipate? Any way for the sentry goblins to give away their position, any way to befriend the wolves or use them to your advantage, any way to use the flood to injure the goblins, any way for you to get the hostage before he's threatened with death, and any way for you to use the bugbear's pet as a leverage against him. All of the ways to screw you are carefully prepared in advance, while the ways to bypass the challenges are not. The dungeon is only designed to work against you. And if the PCs capture a goblin alive, it ends up knowing way too much about what's going on. This is a simple mook monster. This information needs to be cut way down or made a lot more vague, and only Clark could really have this much information available if he gets captured. So let's review. The dungeon is designed to screw you in every possible way, but not let you turn the tables and put the goblins on the defensive. It's a compact, tight space where your light source will almost always give you away. The passages that you could use to sneak around are dangerous, and might kill your rogue anyway. And aside from the flooding idea, this is just a basic cave system with very little to distinguish it or make it feel like a cool location. And the treasure, it just sucks. It barely makes the whole endeavor worthwhile. If you sold everything except the healing potions, you would still only walk away with 61 gold. But wait, you say, what about the crates of goods that you can transport back to town, or the hostage you can escort to Phandalin? Well, that's true. But there's still only 100 gold pieces combined, and it involves hand waving the fact that you are 5 miles from your wagon, which is already packed with supplies as it is. It would be a colossal pain in the ass to transport all this stuff 5 miles through the wilderness. It doesn't even make sense. Then they only included these two sources of income to force the players to get the associated plot hooks. Don't be fooled by these kind of shenanigans. They're totally unnecessary. So how could we make this dungeon not suck? That's a lot easier than you think. First, we could give the goblins at location 2 a campfire. They could be cooking fish and making a nice little smoke plume, unawares, excited for a meal, easy prey for the PCs. If you have some testicles, you could replace the fish with body parts, maybe the leg of Sildar Hallwinter, who could still be alive but near death, missing some pieces, a symbol of the horrific evil that these goblins pose to civilized folk. You know, a reason to care about this stuff in the first place. Next, you turn these wolves into resentful, abused dogs, open to being befriended by a kind ranger or druid. Allow the players to turn them against their wicked masters, and drop some treasure in this room, maybe a wooden table with a few pieces of equipment on it, just waiting to be picked up by the raiding party as it leaves the cave. Then fill the stream passage with vibrant, glowing fungi, making it hard for the goblin on the bridge to even notice that somebody has a light source inside the cave. The fungi could even be harvestable and sold for some coin. Still require a check to climb up to location 4, but don't make it collapse. And then have it connect to the back area of room 6 so someone could conceivably sneak in and free the hostage without being noticed by the goblins in the other part of the room. You could even add some holes in the ceiling here to bring in a little light so you don't need a torch. I would actually remove the bridge entirely. Goblins can't make nice things. And have the sentry here standing in the water. And then I would move the goblins from location 7 down here in front of the dam, maybe holding rats under the water to see how long they take to drown. Again, these are evil little bastards. Make them evil. And if you want to add another passage here, the PCs could sneak up and trigger the dam collapse, flooding out 4 goblins in one blow. It could also be plausible that the goblins screwed up, so if the PCs sneak back out, anyone coming to investigate the situation would see it as a self-own. You could also put some more mushrooms at location 7, maybe some alchemical equipment, and a goblin that's doing experiments with it. Introduce some potions that are actually cool, like gaseous form or one that turns you into a giant frog for 5 rounds. Something a PC might actually be excited to locate. And you could turn Clark into a real bastard. When the PCs are down in location 3, maybe he beats a goblin to death for some minor infraction and throws their body down the slope to feed the dogs. Then put a few things in his lair to support his monstrous nature. An elf head on a spike, severed hands nailed to the wall, a collection of teeth from various humanoids. And of course, put in some actual damn treasure. Maybe a magic item that he uses to impress the goblins, or a weapon you can't buy in a store. The information in this entire adventure is handed out in these massive info dumps. Break it up into smaller chunks, spread it out, keep it simple. What do the PCs need to know when they leave this dungeon? Gundren and his map were taken to Clark's boss. That's literally it. That's all the PCs need to learn before they leave this dungeon. I wouldn't even tell them where the boss was unless they captured Clark alive. You want the party to go to Phandalin next. There are NPCs there. There's time. There's a lot of space. The PCs can talk to people and dig around for more information. Right now, they're in a moist cave filled with goblin parts. The fact that Sildar is looking for his old friend Iarno is optional. Nobody needs that. You could just create an NPC in Phandalin that was writing and back and forth with Sildar about this. The stolen goods in the cave are already marked with the symbol of the lion shield Coster and Phandalin, so they are going to infer that it is a good idea to bring that stuff back anyway. Focus on the task at hand. There is no need to even name drop the Black Spider at this point. For God's sake, you don't have to spoil the movie in the damn trailer. They pursued the goblins. The next step is to go to Phandalin and secure a base of operations for further adventures. It's that simple. I will see you in Phandalin in the next video. Chubby Funster out.